So we're going to look at a Gen 4 Glock 19. A lot of people say these have triggers not as good as other generations. That's complete garbage. I don't like to polish these parts to hell and back. I don't really think it's necessary to upgrade trigger parts, and I don't think that lightning springs necessarily gives you a better shooting Glock. There's qualities of this gun that are for a purpose. It is not a single action gun. It is a safety action striker fire gun. A lot of striker fires are single action guns. It's a whole different animal. This is a Glock. There's a reason for the way this operates. You have a lot of contact surfaces in this trigger bar, the way it hits this disconnector, and the way it works in this front end, that can cause you to see maybe one or two coming out of the store that are just perfect, really wonderful shooting guns, and then others that came out of the same batch and they're not as good, but they all work. What I like to do is bring them within the same factory specs as that good shooting one without mucking up the gun. I don't polish a million different parts and place a bunch of springs and then hand you back a glob of new parts and expect that to produce a good trigger job. What I like to do is take the actual Glock and figure out what's wrong. So what's the first thing I did is I divided this into two pieces. Now, what I can do, sometimes I'll go directly to the problem and just recognize it, but I can take the trigger housing out so that this back end of the trigger bar just floats. And then I'm working on just the front end and the pin fitment, the locking block, and the slide stop, which can have an effect on the trigger operation, including just a bad trigger shoe, or one that's out of spec. So all of these things have to line up to make just this front end hinge properly and be smooth. But once I've got that done, what I look for is inside the edge of the frame, where the plastic's been molded, the polymer. I look for imperfections, but I'm not going to grind anything off. I'm just going to bring it back to what I would call a perfect factory specification. And then I'm also going to look for any imperfection in my thumbnail, not just gliding over this part that engages the firing pin safety plunger. And we'll get to that as well, because that's part of the puzzle. Well, once I refine all these things up front, I put that trigger housing back in. And what I'm looking for is in this trigger housing, I'm looking for it not to be binding on the connector, to be disconnector, to be binding as it goes in and out off of that edge. I'm looking for the alignment of this connector up against that so that it's not angling too far out or too far in, which can cause different qualities. And I'm making sure that it's properly seated all the way. A lot of people don't seat these all the way in, so they get an inaccurate result there. And I'm also looking at little burr areas here and here. If I feel anything there, I'll clear that up and bring it back to factory spec. I don't feel the need to polish the entire connector. That's just stupid, all right? And then on the trigger bar, I'm looking for the same imperfections. I'm not going to muck with the safety of this sear surface, but if there's something I can't easily fix there and bring it within perfect factory specs, I'll throw it away and just get a new trigger bar. But this is only 15 bucks, and you don't need, it's the same bar even if you buy an upgraded trigger. All you're buying is some fancy trigger shoe, and you can't get a more reliable trigger shoe than this. These are bulletproof. Just get the smooth one. Throw the ridged one away, buy a smooth one, 15 bucks. Refine just these areas. Don't polish the whole thing. You got a fantastic trigger bar. You got a fantastic fitment of the connector and the trigger housing now. Put that all back together, and boom, this is Gen 5, as you can tell, because it doesn't have that little hook hanging down. This is a Gen 5 because it's got the spring integrated inside. So one of the problems, I'll tell you this, I'll go to gun stores, they've got a Gen 5 that's broken. What somebody's done is they put it back together and they didn't get that hooked in properly, and the trigger's not resetting. Guy bought a Glock 43 for a song because the owner said, I broke it and I can't figure out what's wrong. I'll sell it to you for 300 bucks. The guy gave him 300 bucks. I walked into the store. I said, hand it to me. I did this, popped it back together in 2 minutes. They said it's fixed, no charge. All right. So I've got the bottom end smooth as glass, nothing in there, and I'm gonna go to the top end. So first thing I'm gonna do is check this safety plunger, make sure that it's smooth as glass, that the spring is not bent and it seats in there. If there's any part there that I feel like is bad, I'm gonna throw it away, put a new one in. Putting a light spring here messes with the safety. It's a good way to make a Glock go full auto. I want this to be smooth as glass, and I want to check the operation of this striker, the function check it to make sure it locks in and out of safety, and that is absolutely perfect. All right, but what I can do is when I put it back together, I still feel some problems in the trigger that I don't like. Customer might be saying, man, that's great, I love it, that's 10 times better than it was. And I may tell them, I'm still not happy with it. Let me have it back for another 15 minutes. And so what I do is I look for little imperfections like this end of this spring hooking. I may switch it just to see if that fixes it, or if there's one way is better than the other. I'm not putting a light spring in here if I don't have to. Why should I put, if I can leave the factory stuff in there and make it great, why not? All right, especially this is a carry gun. So what I'm going to do is roll my thumb around and look for where those two halves of the spring cups meet, and I'm going to refine any of that. I've had problem guns that I could just swap these and it fixed it, but I can also make it better. So what I'm going to do is work on the end of that spring, polishing it, and this without, and I'm not going to polish this striker. Don't screw with the striker. There's nothing wrong with it. So I'm going to press down here and then lightly just work my way around on 2000 grit with WD-40. And it's like any gunsmithing where you're maintaining that angle, and I'm not roughing up that plastic part. It actually makes it glossy, shiny, smooth. This paper does, especially this paper is old, so it's really not 2000 grit. It's something much smoother than that. And I'm just going to refine this, and I'll sit and work on this, and I'll go a little bit and then dry it off and try it again. Now, if I have any doubt in this channel liner, I'm going to throw it away, yank it out, throw it away, and I'm going to take the new one and make sure it's perfect, absolutely perfect to factory specs, and then put it in with the bevel out and seat it really good. And then I'm going to go back to work here, making sure that when I push this out, first off, it's tight. It's tight. It's tight in there, just like factory, but it's smooth as it glides out. Look, there's no binding. Before, there was like a little sticky, bindy kind of feel. It would stop and go, stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. And I could feel that in the trigger press. All right, so now I'm going to go back together and going to pin that sleeve, and then I'm going to, I don't polish the extractor rod. There's no reason for it. But make sure that this is all put back together. Make sure there's a sharp hook on your extractor. If you use steel case ammo, that can really shorten the life of that. And just put this all back together clean and dry, and you can feel just how much smoother, like glass that is. It's still probably 6-7 pound trigger. I don't know, whatever factory spec is, 6 pounds. But man, now I'm sure that when I come up on the trigger, I'm going to be able to get on that wall aggressively and quickly. But once I'm on there, it's very smooth. There's no garbage on the way to the wall, no garbage. And then when I'm there, I'm going to be able to just like glass smoothly. Oh, there's nothing there but just smoothness through that transition. That is just beautiful. And then after I fire, I'm going to be able to have a strong enough reset that I can just relax. That's what I like about Gen 4s. I can control that spring pressure, and it's just going to relax, and my finger rides back to reset, and I'm back on it. And so I've got the quality of the speed coming onto the wall, the quality of getting back on the wall, speedy, and then that smooth, predictable break.